We're live. Hi Becky, how you doing?
How's it going?
I'm good. There's always like a technical delay lag when we do these, so I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah, this is my first time doing live, and I guess I didn't have the right permission set, so it like recorded the end of
It's
mine.
just, the technology is amazing. You're on the other side of the world. We're in Los Angeles, you're in Greece, so it like, I think we take for granted how actually insane it is just to be chatting live.
It's true, right? And broadcasting.
No, broadcasting live from two places on the earth. So, everyone, if you aren't familiar with Becky's work, Becky of Becky and the Bots is here joining us today for a little Q&A about her work, a conversation kind of on the basis, how she got started, her influences, all of that. So, Becky, for those that don't know you or maybe do know you, how would you define your work? How would you describe your work?
So my work is very texture driven. It's all about materials. The more materials I can combine together, and the more unexpected those material combinations, the more cohesively I feel like it fits into my world. So in practice, this is like faux fur, plastic, sequins applique being applied to like a couch or a sculpture in the desert, someplace that you wouldn't expect to see these applications. And really like the more the merrier. I'm like, what if it's fur and pearls and it's a shape like an eye and there's a cactus in the back? And I just use this to create a really wild and colorful world that I really enjoy working on.
Pure maximalism, which I
That's true.
totally love. Maximalism of textures and colors and like architecturally or maybe more interior designly. That's one
Mhm.
of my favorite aesthetics, to be honest. It's like
Yeah.
pattern clash and texture
Yeah.
clash and all of that. What about three words to define your work? If you did describe it, visually, how would you, what are three adjectives? I guess they're adjectives to define it.
I think colorful, playful, and textures, I guess.
Amazing. So it seems, I mean, this is probably pretty apparent, but it seems like you must have some sort of background in fashion or jewelry or interiors or, something creative. I know that there was something before this. So how did you get to doing the kind of work that you do now?
I've had a very winding multidisciplinary design career for 17 years. I started actually in graphic design, and that kind of melded into laser cut jewelry. And I realized I loved
Well,
making wearable objects. So I went back to school to learn professional metalsmithing at a school in San Francisco. And I started my own jewelry line that I had for a decade until 2020. I shut it down. My husband and I left the US and I moved to photography and digital work so I could keep working in the arts while we traveled.
amazing. What was the name of your jewelry line?
It was named after my grandma and it was her maiden name, Chich.
Cute.
Yeah,
I mean, you guys chose a very good time to live elsewhere because
it's been wild.
things just aren't getting better. Um, which is why we want to bring just, positivity and creativity and,
Yeah.
kind of give people the mental break that everyone deserves. Um, so, having a background in jewelry and, I would call that kind of like fashion a little bit. Do you see, kind of parts of your past or your interests kind of melding into your current work?
Yeah, definitely. I think everything I've learned throughout my career or like creative career, I forgot to mention I also have a BFA in spatial art with an emphasis
Mm,
in jewelry and small
cool.
metal arts, where I did kind of abstract jewelry and created physical wearable forms. But the actual trade of being a jewelry designer and a goldsmith is super technical. Everything is very tiny, everything is very
So cool.
expensive. There's no room for error. And so I feel like now my work is like in opposition to that. Like I'm designing without the constraints of the body, without physics. I can create a jacket that would weigh 400 pounds because it's crusted in jewels and gold and it's totally not wearable in real life, but I get to explore what that would look like.
That's so cool and that's so interesting because I think that a big advantage to, this new world of digital art and applications and software and everything that we are able to do now, it's
Mhm.
like, you can develop in fantasy. You can like create something that you've always wanted to and maybe wasn't feasible in like the tiny, heavy, expensive world of jewelry design, or really anything, you know. It's like we're working with limitless abilities with gravity and, you know,
Mhm.
technicalities and, you know, the expensive gems, and like there's so
Yeah.
many things that I think is so cool. um
Yeah.
and you do often, you know, you build out these like incredible landscapes and incredible interiors, and you know, you are bringing in people and, you know, clothing and accessories to that mix.
Mhm.
You know, and I know a lot of this is personal work, but do you have, you know, an ideal landing place for it to be if it was client directed? Is that like in the beauty and fashion world? Is that like, you know, for um you know, jewelry or makeup, or is there like a specific industry that you would find your work kind of gearing towards if it was for client driven work?
I mean, I think it's been really fun because the work does go through all these different mediums. Like I've worked with clients in the fashion industry, I've worked with some, you know, big names in the tech industry, product integration. I've done AI for, you know, just marketing content for event flyers and, you know, big billboards. And I love dabbling in all of those industries. Like I think it's super fun to be able to work simultaneously on these projects that like vacillate between things. So I don't think that I want to be tied down to like one specific place. I like taking this kind of visual world that I've developed and seeing how it can be applied to different client work and to different mediums in my own creative work. Like you said, I like to do fashion and I like to do architecture and interiors, and seeing what the same kind of colors and patterns and textures and motifs look like when they're applied across different applications.
Cool. I totally agree with that. And that's actually great advice to any other artists out there, is to keep your versatility really wide and to keep
Mhm.
your skill sets really wide. You know, like pigeonholing yourself, it can be a really difficult thing to just like be the person that does, you know, whatever, the mushrooms, or be the
Yeah.
person that only does the crazy characters. It's like keeping that just kind of openness in your work and in
Mhm.
your capabilities super important.
Yeah.
So talking on that, what do you want to talk about your process a little bit, or kind of how, you know, you go from idea to execution to final? Are a lot of your works that you see personal projects? Kind of walk us through the steps of your journey.
Yeah, my Instagram is almost exclusively personal work. And I'm generally trying to, you know, figure out the material application first. So like what happens if I combine, you know, these three things? What does that look like? And then applying it to whatever I'm making at the time, fashion or interiors. I think one of the questions that I get all the time is like, what is the prompt? Drives me crazy because it's not a prompt, it's an iterative process. I'm doing like progressive editing through multiple apps. I start out big, brainstorming, you know, narrowing it down, culling it, just like you would do with photography, identifying the best images, and then I edit them through different apps and through traditional photo editing with Photoshop until I feel like it aligns with what I have in my head.
Cool. What's the most like manual or analog part of the process for you? Is it like the beginning ideation, or like the editing towards the end? You know, I know that in these processes there's like many steps, and
Yeah.
you know, you have to have a creative brain to begin with, and you have to know technical softwares for editing. What do you feel is like the most, where does the tradition lie? Like, is it in the beginning or in the end, or like kind of throughout the whole process?
Yeah, I think it's changing. So just within the last few months, I think the models have really improved in lighting. So before, if I was integrating a product, we didn't have that much control over the lighting of the set. So I would create the
Mm,
set that I wanted the product to be integrated into, but I couldn't be like, move the light, you know, an inch to the left, or like switch the lighting from the other side, or make it brighter or darker.
yeah.
The models just didn't really respond to that. So I would then photograph the product with the same lighting from the
Mm,
AI image. So I was doing the AI image first, then I was doing the analog work of making the shadows on the product align with the AI image and then integrating them together in Photoshop. But you don't really have to do that anymore. The lighting is amazing. Like you can take something that's like
Yeah.
two opposite sides and combine it together, and it'll integrate it almost seamlessly. So I think now it's probably just like editing photos, still doing traditional photo retouching on the models, cleaning things up in the background. We're just, grabbing the patch tool or cloning it or whatever, like we did before.
Oh, cool. Because you've been building out this body of work, for your Instagram, for your platform, creatively for, what, 2 or 3 years now? Like, how long has which, and, to be honest, in terms of just how much has evolved technically in the last,
Oh, yeah.
3.5 years with AI and just, capabilities, that's, it's like dog years. That's like 100 years in in human years. Honestly, it's like
Yeah.
I think about what we were doing 3 years ago, or even 2 years ago, or 5 years ago, and it was all so different. So obviously, those advancements like help your creative process. Do you feel like you're constantly learning and kind of picking up, new tools and building that out? It's developing so quickly. How has that been for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be overwhelming. I think we all have a little bit of fatigue from new tools vying for our attention all the time. Like, not only keeping up with the tools that we're already using that are, exponentially improving in their quality and in their features, but also, being bombarded with new things on the market. But I do try my best to stay up to date. I try to test everything. If I see someone posting about a tool that they use, like I'll hop on for a month and get a subscription and test it out and compare it. My stack of tools is ever evolving. The ones that I'm using right now aren't necessarily the ones that I was using 6 months ago.
Do you find that like the tools and the softwares and the platforms that have existed longer are stronger and have developed more, or is it like the new ones to the scene that like know more than the old ones do? Even though this span of what I'm talking about, new to old, is only, a year or 2 or 3 years old,
Yeah.
is there a big, like when you're finding something that's helping you, is it like because they've developed or because someone new has stepped in and filled that void?
I think all of the different platforms have a unique point of view. Like, I still think that Midjourney is the most creative, but you're not going to get the most photorealism from Midjourney. If you are doing work in Midjourney, you probably have to upscale it or edit it or take it into a different app to do additional inpainting. But it is the most creative in my mind. But then we have some new ones coming on the market that are like super photorealistic. I was just testing Seed Dance recently, and of course, Nano Banana and Flux. Yeah, it's hard to say. I think they're all a little bit different, and you have to figure out which one's going to work best for each project.
Totally, totally. And I think that just kind of statement goes as an umbrella kind of in our lives, finding ways that people can integrate this, how it's comfortable to them, how it works best for them. It's no secret that AI has been with us for a long time in our, apps and music softwares and Spotify's and Gmails and all of the things that we do. It's been kind of tracking to our benefit or to try and be to our benefit. So I think that there is application for it to benefit people, and that's just kind of a specific individual perspective and thing that everyone kind of gets to know. For the creative process and for your practice, I know that people have differing opinions of AI when it comes to workflow. And I know it benefits you a lot. It might not be for every artist, but I think that there's probably small things that, can benefit a lot of artists. On the very minuscule, like how would you define an artist or how would you define benefits to someone who's maybe resistant to AI, where it's not going to totally affect their work or their output? Are there small things that people can help by tweaking with the ideation process or mood boarding? Like what are some of the smallest ways that people can maybe advance their process or just, use their brain a little bit more efficiently, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to maybe dispel some of the misinformation and decontextualizing that's been happening. I think there's a prevalent idea that all AI art is theft, and that's of course not true. There's a bunch of platforms that are commercially safe. They're trained on work that the artists have given them permission to use, like Adobe and Getty and Shutterfly. I think Microsoft's new MAI is also trained on data that they got from artists who consented to giving it to them. Or you can train your own model. Like you can
There
create
you
something
go.
that is only your work and you retain 100% of the IP. It's not going to be used for somebody else's work. It's not going into some, nebulous monolith of information. And so I think there's like information that is getting lost. The nuance is getting lost in the discourse, I think. I think also the environmental component, like, AI is using so much water. Okay, compared to what? If you're designing for real world products, the AI image is always going to be less resource intensive than the physical product. So we've seen some studies that, designing and prototyping in AI can reduce like 30 to 50% of the resources in the design process. And like, I personally am working on a product line, and, I love being able to iterate on with AI and seeing like, what is this garment going to look like, taking it from a sketch to a photorealistic, garment. And then there doesn't have to be fabric cut. There doesn't have to be resources used to create these samples, and I can perfect it with AI, and then I can hand it off to the technical designer and the team to build it.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting thing when you think about sampling. You
Yeah,
want to sample garments, you want to sample prints, you want to sample products.
yeah,
There's this whole carbon footprint that goes along with textiles and paper and machines and shipping
massively.
and,
Yeah,
all of that stuff that, I kind of take a neutral stance in this because I, am neutral in the industry. But I
mm,
think it's really interesting to hear you talk about it because no matter which you choose, there's going to be a
mm,
footprint. Is
yeah,
one worse? Is the other worse? There's like so many things stacked up against both sides. But at the end of the day, it is a very cool thing to be able to sample clothes on
mm,
a model or sample, a print on a product or wrap it around a packaging without actually going through the process of using paper and resources and, gas and all of these other resources. Like we have to use resources either way,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's just kind of like picking how you want to produce the product, I guess. You know what I mean? So that's really interesting. And I know that probably you do feel some kickback and some resistance and criticism to, just AI in general and workflow in general.
Yeah.
And like you said, there's pros and cons and balances in all of that. But is there any other things that you wanted to address, like with the environmental impact concerns and ethics concerns that, people might be misinformed about? I think it's such an interesting thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think those two are comments that I see all the time in the online discourse, and I just don't think they're representative of what's happening in every situation. Like, can AI be used for theft? Definitely. And art theft is a huge issue that we all deal with. I've seen my work used in advertisements for companies that I have never talked to before.
Mm,
I have friends that you go on Etsy and you see their work all over being sold by random people who, of course, did not consent. They just download the images from Instagram and
right.
then they sell them as prints. And, that's theft that's not has nothing to do with AI. And I think we have an issue with kind of like the literacy of ownership
Mm,
in art in general. I think a lot of it comes from Pinterest. This is the feedback that I've gotten from people that have used my work in their advertisements. When I contact them, they say, "Oh, I saw it on Pinterest. I didn't know."
right.
It's like, okay, well, I own that and I didn't
Yeah.
license it to use. So please take it down.
Mm,
But yeah, I think the other thing that I see a lot of is like, it's just typing, it's not art.
mm,
And I think that that's a little bit myopic because it minimizes art to only like painting or sculpture where you're actually using your hands. But so much of art is developed with language, with written language. Poetry can be art. As a photographer, if I'm working on a set and I have a prop stylist and I have a lighting tech and I'm saying to them like, okay, move this flower to the left and move the light down. As the photographer, I still have agency and I'm directing the image and creating the thing that I want to create with
Right.
language. And so, yeah, I think it's a complicated question, but I think AI is not always art, but it definitely can be art.
Well, and you touched on two really interesting things: theft in art, like theft in licensing, theft in Pinterest and Etsy, like that's existed since literally the beginning of time, like the concept of original thought being something that can't always be original because people are always getting influenced or they're just directly using it from somewhere else. I've definitely seen that in the last 5 or 10 or 20 years when I didn't exist on the same level. So that's, interesting. And I think it's really easy to, designate blame to something,
Yeah.
like AI, but the theft has been around. And yes, AI can be learning, from the expanses of the internet, but like you said, not every platform is. And I think that there is safer and more ethical ways to use AI in your practice or for anyone to use AI, to be honest. And I'm trying to remember what the other thing that I wanted to talk about was, but yeah, really interesting kind of points all around. Oh, I remember. It takes a huge creative brain to like concept and prompt or concept and, creative direct, like to even initiate these conversations to begin with. I feel like for your world and the stuff that you've developed, it's like, I don't think that that's necessarily possible for just anyone to pick up and do. You know what I mean? Like you've built this world and you've built these environments and textures and people because you're a creative, because you've conceptualized and, identified the worlds that you want to create, right? Like you can give them words, you can give them, descriptions, but the cohesiveness and just kind of these worlds that you've built are so your own. And that's, a big part of the process is like building your signature style, which you've totally, done successfully. um, where do you see your style kind of developing into more? Is there, do you go through like phases or seasons or color palettes or, kind of directions? And do you have kind of a next path or ideas that you want to explore?
Yeah, I think, well, taking things out of the digital world into the real world is something that I'm working on now.
Cool.
Maybe going back and forth between the mediums and how do we integrate real world products into AI spaces and how do we take AI things and bring them into the real world. I really like that challenge, both directions. But I also think just the way that the models have improved in differentiating textures early on. I was like, what does it look like if, you have sparkly plastic and concrete and it also has sequins? And I knew that, I'm talking like early Midjourney 3.5 years ago. I knew it knew what concrete was. I knew it knew what plastic was. I had no idea really what the outcome was going to be when I asked it to create a new hybrid material that nobody's ever made before because it's probably not physically possible. And so these kind of early textural studies became the basis of the work that I do today. But now, we can build in so many more textures. We can build in so much more detail. It looks so realistic. And so I think just continuing to push and innovate in like material applications that are really wild and, maybe can or can't exist in the real world. And just applying it to all the different mediums that I like to explore.
That's really interesting, like creating textures or creating materials that like are impossible. What were those words that you said? You said something about something plastics, like
Yeah, this was like my earliest studies. I was like ceramic and plastic, or concrete and sparkly plastic and iridescent plastic and sequins. And like, what is it going to produce? Like, I don't know what that's going to look like. Now I think the models are much better at creating something that does look realistic. When I'm creating like these sculptures I just put up the other day, and they have all of these materials, pearls and sequins and rhinestones and gems or faux fur and fabrics or whatever, like I'm going to get what I'm telling it to produce. Like I know now that it's going to be pretty close to what that would actually look like in real life. But
yeah.
Early on it was, gambling, I guess. You just didn't really know what you were going to get.
That's so interesting. Like literally merging textures and materials that wouldn't be possible.
Yeah.
But it's so cool to visualize, and truly like bring to life and fabricate some of these things that you've been conceptualizing and building
Yeah.
digitally for so long. I love that. Is this like in terms of installations or sculptures or fashion? Like where's your goals? Where do you want to like actually see this all built out? Because it's endless. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, definitely sculptures in the real world. Some are coming to life.
Yes.
I think, like big dreams, like I want to do a festival. Like I want to make all of these
Mm.
sort of sculptures and I want them to be real and I want people to be able to navigate through them and take pictures and experience the textures in real life. But in terms of other objects that I'm bringing to life under my brand, small scale sculptures, jewelry, and fashion. Been working kind of across these mediums and figuring out how to navigate this for the last year and a half or so.
So cool. Um, have you experimented at all with like, I'm just thinking of like fabricating and physically fabricating, like really manually 3D printing and like physically applying, textures and stuff small scale? I know that you've done jewelry and you've done like really high-end small scale stuff. Have you played with the physical fabrication at all on your own?
So, um, everything that I've done thus far has been completely plastic free, which runs
Amazing.
into a hiccup when you're doing 3D printing. I actually hired this woman who was consulting on materials for me, and we ultimately decided that none of the 3D printing materials fully met my needs. They all had some polymers in them. So I experimented with artists working in metal and wood. I'm not 100% certain on how these works will come to life, but yeah, they haven't been 3D printed.
Yeah, that's one of my least favorite parts about it, and just in general, is the plastic. The use of
Yeah.
plastic, new plastic, we're making
Yeah.
plastic, you know what I mean? Like, if there was a way to make it with a more sustainable, material, I think that would be amazing. What about, I know that sometimes it might be more huge scale, but like with cement
Yeah.
or, like water-based kind of rock granular sand mediums, is that a thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think slip casting is something I would be interested in
Mm,
exploring.
cool.
You can just use ceramics. Um, yeah, I think there's lots of options, and I'm still exploring.
Super cool. Well, I'm going to open it up to a dialogue at the bottom, a Q&A. If anybody has questions for Becky, there's a little button with a question mark. Feel free to drop a comment in there. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of keep rattling things off and not take up too much of your time. But, I've been dying to ask, who are the bots? Who are the bots with us now, or the bots in the room with us?
So it was from Benny and the Jets, Elton
Mm.
John, and I had started an account with Midjourney, and I was immediately hooked. Like I literally stayed up the entire night. I went to bed at like 6 a.m. I just couldn't believe how cool it was. This is like September 2022, I guess.
Totally.
And so I wanted to start an Instagram account to share my work the next day. Like I was like, I have to show the world this is, groundbreaking. And for some reason, Becky and the Bots came to my head. And then I put on the Elton John video, which I
That's
don't know if
so
you've ever
funny.
seen it, but it's these robots who are like dancing around the, Benny to be chosen. And it's super futuristic. And I was like, this is perfectly like cosmically aligned. I have to go with Becky and the Bots as the name.
That's so funny. So the Jets, Benny and the Jets,
Yeah.
the Jets
Yeah.
were robots,
Yes, some of them are
kind
robots, some
of.
of them are people, I think. I don't know. It's
Okay.
very crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Who are the Jets? That's really
The
funny.
backup dancers, I think.
That's such a great backstory. I love that.
Yeah.
Um, do you want to define like your favorite programs that you're working with now, like top three new or old platforms or softwares that really, you found to be beneficial for your workflow?
Yeah, I mean, Midjourney, like I said, is the most creative. I still love Midjourney. For editing, Flux 2 Pro is amazing, and Nana Banana Pro is amazing. Nano Banana and Flux are both integrated into Photoshop Beta and Free Pick, and in Adobe Firefly Boards has additional partner models in it that aren't in Photoshop Beta. Trying to think what else I'm using right now. Magnifique for upscaling is the best one I've
Cool.
used. So I'm usually bouncing images back and forth between these programs. They have different strengths. So upscaling the face might work great in one, and upscaling the texture of the clothing might work in another. Or as I'm editing them, I generally end up with a bunch of variations that end up getting essentially like composited together in Photoshop.
Super cool. Yeah, I know, I'm familiar with and know a handful of those, obviously. Topaz I've done for upscaling. What about free softwares? Are any of these free platforms for people that want to experiment but don't want to like dive in yet?
I don't know. I
I'm sure
spend
they
so
have
much on
trials too.
subscriptions. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there's trials. And like anything, it's, just stacking softwares and,
Yeah.
adding small monthly costs, I think is kind of what we're used to, but that's probably standard for you.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Um, well, amazing. Anything that's exciting that you're, working on or have coming up that you want to share or discuss? Any exciting, developments or drops or print releases or wallpaper downloads or partnerships that you're, allowed to talk about? Is there anything that you want to kind of drop to the people?
I think just staying tuned for the physical products to be
Mm.
released this summer. I am going to be bifurcating the Becky and the Bots Instagram, which will stay as the studio, and I'm going to have a Becky and the Bots shop, which will be the launch will be garments, some kimonos, very beaded, very texture heavy, and jewelry, and then moving into maybe later this year or early next year with home goods, small scale sculptures, and some other fun
So cool.
things.
Very excited for that. Did you use the word bifurcating right now?
I
That's
did.
one of that's a top one for me. I'm very impressed. I love that.
Thanks.
Actually, there is a question from Chaos Dreamland, and of course, if anyone else has a question that they want to drop in before we wrap it up, please feel free. This was regarding an earlier conversation, an early Midjourney experimentation. Do you ever feel we lost some of the magic from the earlier models now that we're in more a photorealistic place with AI? Do you miss the old school AI?
Yeah, definitely. I think sometimes I still go back, not that far back, but maybe like V5, V6, because it just did weirder stuff. It was more
Mm.
playful, I think. And yeah, I mean, you can get from those earlier, kind of wonky images to the photorealism that I like now with upscaling, with editing. It just takes more work. But yeah, I think in general, as the models evolve, we were definitely losing some creativity. And also, hi, Bonita.
I think we're going to go back to these times of remembering like the janky early
Yeah,
AI as like a funny capsule of time, like flip phones or something, you know
yeah,
what I mean? I think we'll go back to that like nostalgically, which is a super funny thing to think about.
yeah.
Um, does Dolly exist? Did Dolly develop?
I have no idea. I haven't heard
Either.
anything about Dolly in a long time.
I started with Dolly and Midjourney, and if, like you, I was like obsessed with Midjourney. I started a new account. I was like, oh my
Yeah,
God, I'm like interpreting my dreams and, doing
yeah,
all of this stuff that,
yeah.
or like, coming them to realization. Like, when I first discovered it, it was so cool. We have a lot of comments of people talking about version 6, 5.2, all kinds of stuff, which I'm assuming is, previous Midjourneys. But for everyone that has joined and hasn't followed Becky and the Bots' work or is just now seeing it for the first time, give her a follow, Becky and the Bots, on Instagram, of course. We're going to keep this conversation live. We save it on our Instagram. We'll put it on our Vimeo if anyone wants to go back to it, kind of learn, share, all things kind of AI and creative driven. And of course, feel free to reach out to us and Becky at any time. Becky, is there anything else that you'd like to note or share? I know that you mentioned upcoming, drops and sculpture drops and kimono drops and all kinds of stuff. So be on the lookout for that too.
Yeah. All right.
Amazing. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Great to see you as always, Becky. And we will be in touch soon.
Okay. Thanks, Hannah. Great to talk.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.